This week on Sci-Fi Buzz, we delve into the paranoid vision of the new futuristic thriller, Dark City.
You've been the cause of much distress.
Space Station Deep Space Nine becomes the love boat for two of the show's stars. Horror writer Poppy Z. Bright admits to having a taste for blood. And Harlan Ellison gives science fiction writers some honest advice.
You gotta get your act together.
Prepare. Stand by. The Buzz.
Movies. Personalities.
Sci-Fi. FX.
Behind the scenes.
Cutting edge. Get ready.
Sci-Fi Buzz. Mike Jarek with the Buzz for the kingdoms of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Even though it's February, a lot of new science fiction in theaters for you. The latest, a dark tale with an unknown lead actor, a lot of familiar faces in the supporting cast, and it's directed by the director of The Crow. A preview of Dark City in just a little bit, but first, Buzz News. Mummies everywhere, especially on this week's Buzz News. Universal is once again trying to revive its classic Mummy franchise, this time with George of the Jungle star Brendan Fraser. Fraser is currently in talks to star as the archaeologist who awakens the linen-wrapped monster. Universal hopes to start shooting the $70 million film in April. And Universal's not the only one trying to reanimate mummies.
Let me go!
Anne Rice, author of the ultra-successful Vampire Chronicles, plans to turn her book, The Mummy, Ramses the Damned, into a feature film. And whom does Ms. Rice hope to helm the project? None other than Titanic director James Cameron. Cameron's company is developing a screenplay based on Rice's book, but it will be quite a while before the script is ready for the cameras. And that's the latest buzz. The new futuristic thriller Dark City aspires to be more than your typical sci-fi popcorn movie. And that's what convinced prestigious British stage actor Rufus Sewell to take the lead role.
The actors weren't just relegated to figures being moved about to make the explosions, look to scale, but there are actually parts to play, and the science fiction of the mind, which was something interesting to work on as an actor.
Sewell had never before considered doing a sci-fi film, but both he and co-star Kiefer Sutherland were intrigued by this script because it seemed to be about more than just action and special effects.
The story being as solid and focused as it is in this film only adds to the effect that the special effects can ultimately have on an audience, because they are involved, in fact, in the story. You can go see some films that are, stunt after stunt after explosion after stunt after stunt, and that's exciting for a while, but sooner or later it's not going to matter if you don't care about the people that are going through those stunts and explosions and everything else.
While Dark City employs plenty of special effects, it's not one of those films where the audience can expect to sit back and be taken on a ride. Writer-director Alex Proyas.
It's definitely designed to be demanding. It's designed to not give you everything instantly in the first 5 minutes of the movie. It's designed to leave some things hanging.
Wait, you have the wrong man.
Stand aside, will you please?
I didn't kill anyone.
Right now.
The film starts out with the audience in the dark as to exactly what's going on. A man awakens in a strange hotel to find himself hunted by a policeman for a string of brutal murders. He doesn't know if he committed the crimes because he's lost his memory.
You have to work a little bit as an audience. You're not quite sure what's going to happen next. Sometimes it takes a while for something to be explained, and you have to wait a few scenes to get the explanation.
For people who find it too complicated, fine, go and see something else. But what I like about it is the fact that it makes you think. It actually gets to you in areas of your mind, and it's not visual wallpaper. And if it was, I wouldn't be in it.
As the lead character struggles to solve the mystery of his identity, he makes a startling discovery. The people who live in the eerie city where he has somehow ended up are being completely controlled by strange, bald-headed creatures they don't even know exist.
They are being manipulated. Their whole lives are fabrications. The world they live in is a created world, and that they're basically being used as guinea pigs in a laboratory experiment.
With this fantastical premise, Proyas is making a statement about what he sees as the real-life puppet masters who control people's minds.
One thing that has struck me quite often is the power of the media in our lives and how it can alter people's opinions without them actually being aware of it. You know, a very mundane example of that is, you know, you overhear people talking about a film that's just come out at a party, and you hear people word for word repeat something they've read in a review.
So we're not going to tell you to see Dark City, and we're not going to tell you not to see it. Like director Alex Proyas, we want you to think for yourself.
Sci-Fi Buzz.
Next, two actors who fell deeply in love on Deep Space Nine, and the horror writer who's as novel as her work.
The buzz is with you.
We want to take just a few minutes to salute the Fox network, because over the last couple of years, they've given us sci-fi fans an impressive number of new shows. Sure, they've come up with some duds, but they keep trying over there to develop a winner. I mean, it's going to take a few Mantises and VR5s and Strange Lucks to come up with one X-Files or Sliders. And even though Millennium and The Visitor may not be setting the sci-fi world on fire, at least they keep trying, and we think that's terrific. Thanks, Fox.
No more work to be done. Just go to his quarters and sit with him.
I said no.
From their curt exchanges on Deep Space Nine, you'd never guess that cast members Nana Visitor and Alexander Siddig are madly in love. The two were married last June. That they would end up as husband and wife was as much of a surprise to them as to everyone else on the show.
I used to talk to him about his girlfriends and try to, I actually tried to set him up with my best girlfriend.
I was telling someone the other day, actually, that I was her safe date for 3 years.
The actors met on the pilot episode of the series. The first words they spoke to each other were hostile lines from the script.
This wilderness is my home. Cardassians left behind a lot of injured people, Doctor. It's hard on especially a series, a TV series. It all becomes very blurred how much, you know, is your character, and you're getting in and out of character somewhat, but a little bit remains. And of course, my character, especially at that time, was very hard-edged, and his was fresh and eager.
Despite their characters' antagonism, Siddig and Visitor soon became best buddies. But neither was the first person to see the possibility of their friendship blossoming into something more. Rather, it was Nana's mother, one New Year's Eve when Siddig was escorting Visitor.
My mother said, "What's that handsome young man doing here?"
He's a nice boy, Nana.
Yeah.
Why don't you?
But she was like, "I think he likes you." I was like, "Please, Mama." You know how you say, "Mama, come on, no."
It can't be cool to be liked by your mother. I mean, it can't be cool. It's the coolest thing not to be liked.
So Nana and Alexander continued to live in total denial of their mutual attraction. But from time to time, they felt the unmistakable sparks of electricity between them. Like when they shot this scene where they had to kiss.
Doctor, Commander Sisko needs to see you in the wardroom.
I remember looking in his eyes and going, no, and just panicking a little bit inside.
It's a weird
of
love
me.
scene. I mean, there was no chat.
It was
just go and kiss.
But even when love was hitting them over the head, these two were determined to avoid it like the plague.
And we both convinced each other for many reasons why it must not happen. See you after the show. No way. Okay, that's it. And
yeah,
somehow we just couldn't.
We said we promised each other because we worked together. It just wasn't possible because, frankly, that's what I'd heard. Well, he's always happy to be leaving. Got to punch the clock now.
Obviously, Siddig and Visitor failed in their tireless efforts to avoid the inevitable. They've become the cute, cuddly couple they were always meant to be. And they've learned that, far from being a problem, working together has big advantages.
I mean, I could be, for example, some hard-working lawyer who leaves the house at 6:30, comes back at 8. And that happens 5 days a week, and Saturdays too, if it's just starting out. So from that point of view, we see a huge amount of each other.
And what's the biggest challenge of working together?
Well, the toughest part of working together is tolerating her.
Yeah. But that's the entire crew's, refrain. They all find it very difficult to deal with me.
She's a nightmare.
This is Nancy from Huntsville, Arkansas. I want to let you know about two great nonfiction UFO books by Dolores Cannon. They are The Legend of Star Crash, about an alien spacecraft that crash-landed in the Alaska-Canada region. Through their survival, some of our American Indian tribes were created. The other, Keepers of the Garden, follows the ancient astronaut theory of how the Earth was seeded by aliens from outer space. They've been watching us since our creation and are still monitoring our progress today. The books are available through Ozark Mountain Publishing, and their number is 1-800-935-0045.
There are many words that can be used to describe author Poppy Z. Brite, but ordinary is definitely not one of them. As the writer of seductive, blood-splattered tales like Drawing Blood and Lost Souls, Poppy is often referred to by her fans as a goddess of horror. But the road to success has been filled with potholes for this 30-year-old New Orleans native.
Now, at 19, you thought you were nuts.
I was self-destructive. I was doing self-mutilation. I was drinking way too much. It was stupid stuff to do, but it was also one of the most creative times of my life. I wrote my first novel then. I wrote a lot of short stories, so I'm not sorry that I went through it at all, but I'm glad that I don't feel like that now. I definitely have it a lot more together now.
Now, I've heard you've done some blood drinking.
I haven't saved huge quantities in bottles and used it as a cocktail, but no, I've drunk blood out of people's cuts.
I would imagine that most of the people in the audience are asking, why?
Well, it's sexy as hell to them that likes it, and them that don't likes it are never going to understand. And there's just really no explaining that. Blood is a beautiful bodily fluid.
A one-time erotic dancer, Poppy has developed a fervent following in the last 5 years with the publication of 4 novels and several short stories.
Who reads your work?
I'm always surprised by the diversity of my audience. I get a lot of gay readers, I get a lot of young readers, I get a lot of gothic readers, but then, just when I think I have that pegged, I'll have some 70-year-old guy show up at a signing with his wife, and he's carrying a shopping bag full of everything that I've ever published.
Though happily married, Poppy often claims to be a gay man in a woman's body. And thus far, her stories have focused on male characters. Now she's taken on a decidedly un-Poppy-like project by writing a biography of rebel punk singer turned respectable actress Courtney Love.
I had never managed to explore a strong female character in fiction to my own satisfaction, or to that of some of my female readers who write me to complain about this. So I took this on, at least partly, to force myself to confront this, and it certainly forced me to do that.
Poppy started her career writing about vampires. Now she's written Exquisite Corpse, a book that imagines a meeting between 2 serial killers. It's a subject that appears to be of great interest to her.
I'm sick of vampires, but I would love to do a sexual serial killer anthology. And I've even written a proposal for this to send out to editors and writers. And one of the things that I say that I think is true is that the serial killer is the vampire of the new millennium, the werewolf of the post-industrial landscape. And I think, he's a monster for our times, but he's real and he's out there. And so he's a lot scarier than vampires and werewolves.
Do you just stun people?
I seek out people who will not be stunned because I enjoy just being able to talk about these things without having people say, oh God, you're sick.
Sci-Fi Buzz.
Harlan Ellison assesses the state of science fiction writing after this communication.
This is Sharon Schneider giving a recommendation for the new book, St. Leibowitz and the Wild Horse Woman, which is a long-awaited sequel to the classic Canticle for Leibowitz. almost 40 years in the making. The story is a parallel story to Part 2 in Canticle, which took place about 1,200 years after a nuclear holocaust. And it concerns a very naive 35-year-old monk at the St. Leibowitz Abbey who's going through a spiritual crisis. It's an excellent book, different from the original, but an interesting sequel.
Time. Time, yes. The arrow of time flies always in the same direction. And now it is time for me to talk about the state of the industry. No, let me correct that. Not the industry, that's business. I want to talk to you about the state of the art. A number of things have been occurring to me, and this is coming up on our 80th show, and I wanted to try and solidify a few thoughts. One of them has to do with the necessity of writers promoting themselves. Now, there is some sort of strange belief that the minute a writer tries to promote himself, goes on television or does a commercial or goes out and tries to sell him or herself, that he or she is somehow a fish peddler, demeaning oneself. Well, that may well have been the case in the days of Henry James, but it's certainly not the case today. When people talk about science fiction today, or when you see shows like Sci-Fi Buzz, there's almost nothing about books and writers. More on this show than on almost any other. You'll see shows, hard copy, they'll do 9,000 science fiction shows, and they never once show you the writer. They'll show you Schwarzenegger in costume, or Bruce Willis dolled up in weird garb for Fifth Element. Writers are becoming more and more invisible, and the audience is vanishing. You've got to understand that at last. I've been saying this for years. I don't like being the specter at the banquet. You've got to understand, the audience is getting ever more illiterate. They talk about sci-fi. They talk about the kind of movies they want to see in television, and they have no idea that these things are actually written by human beings. The time has come for other writers to understand that the only reason that I'm still around after 40 years writing is that I have made sure that I appear in other venues where my books will be noticed and will be mentioned, and my name will have some coin. That keeps me earning a living. There are writers, terrific writers who were stars when I started in 1955 as a professional, who are today flipping hamburgers in fast food joints. Literally. I'm not exaggerating. They are flipping hamburgers as a second job because they can't get published. And those who are being published are publishing things that they wish that they would never have had to do. I'm going to do another show about that. That'll be the one that'll follow this. But for the moment, let me talk about authors trying to grab onto a little bit of posterity. It's very, very hard. If I say the name Henry Kuttner to you, most of you have never heard the name. If I say the name Cordwainer Smith, maybe a few more have. But I'm telling you that writers are becoming more and more invisible. And those of you out there who care about your future, you have got to find some way to make your profile higher. You can no longer sit back at home and think that it's going to be done for you. Because while you're sitting back home, the Jennies of the world are going to be out there having their own TV series and becoming stars. Jenny McCarthy is not as good as you are. Maybe prettier than most of you, but she's not as good as most of you. So you've got to do something about it. And that goes for people who write screenplays. You know, SFWA, Science Fiction Writers America, whose throat I try and squeeze as often as possible, they still do not have a drama category. Many of us quit the organization because they don't have a drama category. They do not understand that writing screenplays and writing teleplays is just as honorable as writing cheesy little paperback adaptations of the X-Files or Xena novels. But no, they'll talk about that stuff, but they won't have a drama category. And publishers, when they try and publish screenplays, they refuse to publish them in script form. They publish them just linear. It's ridiculous. This kind of thing troubles me. It is a situation that produces uncritical viewers. And that leads to the kind of movies that we see that bastardize the ideas in science fiction. We're talking about The Fifth Element and Batman and Robin and Independence Day, heaven knows. These are all really bad, dopey, stupid films, and they overshadow good little films like The Arrival. The Arrival is Independence Day with a brain in its head, or Charlie, or Seconds, which I've recommended to you many, many times on this show. When we have a constituency that's illiterate, because they have been programmed to be illiterate, then it programs the death of writers. And I'm telling you, you've got to get your act together. writers have got to start doing something about it. You can't just sit back and say, oh, it's not really happening. That's like people talk about violence. They say, well, they had violence in New York City in the 1700s. Yeah, they did, but life is not a comparison of Chamber of Horrors. 1700 in New York doesn't mean that you want to get somebody shot down dead in the street today. I'm talking to you, writers. I'm talking to you straight on. I'm talking to the readers. An ignorant, illiterate constituency means the death of good writing. But look, I feel myself getting weak, and I'm fading away, and the time is up. But I'll be back. This one's going to be, I'm going to go on, and there's going to be, you'll stick.
Before we go, trivia time here, February 23rd. Whose birthday is it? Huh?
Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, that may actually be right. Well, that would be around that time. How about Major Barrett Roddenberry? Happy birthday to you. In fact, let's all sing happy birthday to her, okay? 1 and a 2 and a... Hold on a second. No budget. We'd have to pay for that, I think. See you next week, everybody.
Can a dim-witted inventor and some high-tech tools keep history from falling to pieces? Find out when Mystery Science Theater 3000 presents Time Chasers, today at 5 p.m. Eastern. Now, meet Vincent Price, Master of Fantasy.